I've now explained the 6 building blocks of the robust method. But to take an idea and turn it into a successful product, into something that you can touch and appreciate and sell, it's essential to have a good understanding of the person who's going to buy it. Over the years, I've talked to a wide variety of people, and I've listened to their wishes and needs. I've worked to condense these down into what I call the triangle of markets. These are the 3 fundamental markets for repairable products. First, there's the workhorse market. This is all about the performance of the product. It's the realm of decisions that are based on logic and characteristics that are easy to measure. Often the buyer is a tradesperson or a business, and sometimes the buyer and the user are different people. And concrete questions come up in this market, like, can this machine drill 100 holes in a concrete wall every hour? Or can it plant 10 acres of potatoes every day? At the end of the day, it's about the sums and whether or not they add up. Second, we have the heirloom market. This is all about the experience that someone has when they own the product. And in contrast, it's all about emotion. Does the person really love the product? Does it make them smile? Do they love to use it and to come back for more and to talk about it and to tell their friends how great it is? And for this market, it's essential to design a product that's in one way or another enchanting. Something that's the opposite of ephemeral and feels as close to being perfect as can possibly be. Third, there's the pioneer market. This is all about giving people independence. It's about bringing a product back to its roots, about simplicity. So you should be designing a product that can be built and used and repaired locally without relying on lots of imports and exports and long supply chains. So in economic terms, it's about small circles rather than big circles, and about giving people the freedom to do things for themselves. I'm now going to show you 3 examples, one for each market. My example for the workhorse market is this coffee machine. It's one of the most reliable products that I own. It never gives me any trouble. And I'll start with a story. I've loved coffee for as long as I can remember. And my favorite kind of coffee is filter coffee. But it's hard to find a tough filter coffee machine. They're often cheap plastic machines that are fragile and for which you can't get any spare parts. And at one point, I discovered the company Bunn of the United States, and I really wanted to lay my hands on a Bunn model OL20 coffee machine. It's about the same size as this and also made of stainless steel, but it has beguiling curves which remind me of an Airstream Caravan. So it's a lot more stylish. And you used to get them for a time in Dunkin' Donuts. And when I went to work in the United States, on the way back, I knew I could carry 2 70-pound bags. So I thought, okay, one bag for my clothes and another for a coffee machine. But I found it hard to get an OL20 for a sensible price. It was also difficult to build a wooden shipping crate to protect it on the flight. So that idea went to the wall and I was disappointed. As it happened, I didn't waste the baggage allowance because a professor called Woody Flowers kindly gave me a large pressure gauge and cylinder from a vintage hydraulic press. So I packed those up and brought those back on the plane instead. And I'll pick up the story again a decade or more later. My employer in Germany threw away this coffee machine and I dumpster dived it. And I found that there wasn't a lot wrong with it. There was a crimped electrical connector that was loose and was getting hot. And there were some screws that were stuck in place because of galvanic corrosion. But beyond that, it only really needed a descale and a good clean. This is a Bonomat Mondo 2 coffee machine built in the Netherlands, and it's dated August 1991 inside, so it's now 33 years old and it's still going strong. It's easy to get inside the machine. 2 screws and the back panel comes off, and you can see that the housing is made out of stainless steel sheet, so there's no surface coating to wear off, and the brushed finish means that it doesn't show the scratches. The joints also overlap like roof tiles, so if you spill water on the machine, it's guided out of the housing rather than in. The main heating element is in a stainless steel vessel over here, and it's secured with a spring clip so that it's easy to get out if you need to replace it. And the heating element also generates steam, which pushes the water up from the bottom to the filter funnel at the top. This means that a mechanical pump isn't necessary, so there aren't any moving parts to wear out. However, this was one of the first machines of its type to use electronic control. Here, you can see a substantial circuit board with some relays at the top and some Schmidt triggers in the middle, which interface the digital electronics with the sensing circuits for the water level and the lime scale. And down at the bottom, there's what I think is a basic microcontroller, possibly a PIC controller, but it's hard to know because it uses a proprietary serial number. And this is a questionable development in catering equipment because a lot of catering equipment today fails as a result of the electronics. So the heating elements and the valves and the potentiometers and everything are in good working order. But if the electronics dies, it's a black box that's very difficult to comprehend. And if you can't get a replacement circuit board, you're faced with throwing away the whole machine and buying another. If I replace the panel, these are nice standard screws, so I don't have to go looking for a weird screwdriver. When you turn the machine around, you can see that it's totally utilitarian. The top and bottom here are decorated with plastic labels. Now, I wouldn't have made this choice as a product designer. I would have preferred to emboss the manufacturer's name into the stainless steel because labels have a habit of degrading and peeling off. Having said that, these are 1/3 of a century old and they're still in perfect condition. So for labels, they're doing very well. The jug is also a very nice piece of design. It's made out of stainless steel and polypropylene, practically unbreakable, but it's of standard dimensions. So if this does go missing, or if it breaks, because you can also get them in Pyrex glass, you can easily get another. And it pours beautifully. And these things are often problems with cheaper domestic coffee makers. Jugs that don't pour nicely, and if they break, you're left with replacing the whole machine because you can't get a new jug. I do have one criticism of the hot plates. These are made out of aluminium, and they have threaded holes in the bottom with steel screws attaching the hot plate. And when I took this machine apart to clean it and overhaul it, the screws broke off. So what I had to do was to make a jig so that I could drill exactly in the middle of the broken screw and then put a screw all the way through with a nut on the bottom. And I wonder why they didn't do that in the first place, or if they didn't want to, maybe attach the hot plate using a spring clip instead. There's also an interesting spring inside the filter funnel here. What this does is it creates a void underneath the paper filter, because if you put a lot of ground coffee in one of these filters, it pushes the filter against the funnel and blocks the flow. So this creates a void so that it flows quickly. And you can still get this as a spare part. It costs €4.80 today. To use the coffee maker, take one of these filter papers, which are standardized and widely available. And if you don't have one, you can also tear off a square sheet of paper kitchen towel and use that. If you're desperate for coffee, it works quite well. Put your ground coffee in the filter. Push this into place at the top. And then fill the tank with water. The power switch here is on the front. On this machine, it's an absolute workhorse. This will make you hundreds of mugs of coffee every day without complaint. This machine certainly makes a good aromatic mug of coffee. And what's more, it can make it in large quantities. Moving on to the next corner of the triangle, my example for the heirloom market is this hand plane made by Lee Nielsen Toolworks of Warren, Maine in the United States. It's still a relatively young and small company. It was founded by Tom Lee Nielsen in 1981, and today it has about 90 employees. And Lee Nielsen only makes hand tools, doesn't make any power tools, and it's known for its refusal to cut corners when it comes to quality. The location is also interesting because when you want to make a repairable product, something that's not commodified, where your business is based is very important. And in New England, Lee Nielsen can draw upon the local traditions of forestry and carpentry, and also on the tool and machine makers throughout the United States. Kipper, no. I know you like milk, but no. To a carpenter who likes hand tools, this plane is incredibly pleasing to use. It gives the impression of precision and perfection. This is just a rough piece of Scots pine, but it's leaving a beautiful finish here, and it's cutting through the knots without tearing them out. But although it's versatile, this isn't really a general purpose plane. It's intended for a special purpose. Here you can see that the blade stretches all the way across the sole, which means you can plane up into a corner. So you can use it to make a rebate for a window frame, or even to make a tenon. Now, if I kept going, I could make a large tenon with this plane. And it's not a new design. It's based on a Stanley Model 10 1/4, which was discontinued in the 1940s. But Tom Lee Nielsen has taken this design and revived it and perfected it. Instead of the original grey cast iron, these are made out of nodular cast iron, which is ductile. And that's important because of the cutout here in the wall for the blade. Here, the metal isn't that thick, so it would be easily broken if it was a fragile metal. He's also changed the design of the nickers here, which cut through the fibres when you plane across the grain, so that it doesn't tear out. And there are lots of accessories available, like these cherry-handled screwdrivers. These are used in the factory to assemble the planes, and you can also take one and use it to slacken the handles. So here, if you want to plane into a deep corner, you can tilt the knob to the side so you don't scrape your knuckles. And the end result is something that is incredibly satisfying because of the look and feel and sounds and textures. You want to treasure it as an heirloom and pass it down to the next generation. My example for the last corner, the Pioneer Market, is this lampshade, which is inspired by a king protea, the national flower of South Africa. It was built by John Chaputega of Fort Victoria in Zimbabwe, and it's sitting on a wooden lamp base that was built many years ago by my father. In South Africa today, about 90% of households have electricity, so nearly everyone needs a lampshade. And this one is made entirely out of beads and interlocking wire. There's no glue or tape in it. And for John, this isn't a full-time business. It depends on the demand. When there isn't so much demand for beadwork products, then he drives a truck and farms fish. And when there is, like in the 2010 Football World Cup, he has a stall in the mall. Most lampshades are nothing like as tough as this beadwork protea design. Often, when you're designing a lampshade, you want a material that lets the light pass through. So it protects your eye from the glare of the bulb, but it diffuses the light around the room without blocking it out. And this is a difficulty when it comes to many of the toughest materials. You can make a beautiful lampshade out of riveted brass or woven reeds, but because they're opaque, you'll only ever have a cone of light descending onto the table. This is one reason why most lampshades are made either out of thin fabric or thin paper. And these are usually coloured with soluble dyes, but these dyes are not very permanent. To show you what I mean, I grabbed a curtain on the way down here, and you can see how the fabric has been bleached by the sunlight, where the folds have been exposed and pressed up against the window. And you can also see that the ultraviolet light has weakened the material, so it's torn. You get similar problems with fabric lampshades, and also the issue of gluing. Glue is a difficult topic in design for repair because you have to reckon on someone needing to renew the glued joints at some point in the future. So if you're looking for a durable colour, glass is a good option because glass is coloured using insoluble pigments, essentially coloured powder, which is mixed into the molten glass, and this doesn't really fade. But glass is fragile and difficult to work with. If you want to, you can make a lampshade in the same way that you can make a stained glass window for a church. You can cut little panes and make a leaded framework and then solder the panes into the frame, and then you'll have a beautiful result, but it will be heavy and costly and fragile. And glass beads, like we have here, offer some extra freedom. Each bead is about 3 millimeters across. It's roughly the shape of a donut. And because of its small size and squat shape, it's much less easily broken than a big sheet of glass. And the way these beads are bound together with wire gives them some flexibility. This beadwork is actually tough enough that you can use it to make children's toys. And it's also something that's perfect for a small business because you can do it with simple tools and without a lot of investment. I was asking John how he got into beadwork, and he said he knew an old man who was struggling to walk, and he let the man stay in his own home for a while. And the man started to explain beadwork and make some key rings to sell. And he taught John the artistry, how to come up with the concepts and how to do the beadwork quickly and economically. And the way that he makes something like this, first of all, he'll build a strong frame out of thick steel wire, which goes around the edges of all the petals and links them to a ring, which goes underneath the bulb. Then he takes a Coke bottle, a big one, and cuts out the side to make a vessel that looks like a boat. And he pours all of his glass beads into the boat. He takes a thin steel wire and rubs it on the concrete floor to sharpen the end. He bends it into an arc and dips this repeatedly into the boat of beads to pick them up. And if he wants to, he can mix the colours of the beads in the boat to make speckled beadwork, or he can even hold several wires in his hand to make it go faster. And after a few minutes, he'll have a metre or so length of wire filled up with beads. He makes kinks in the ends to stop them coming off, and then he'll take the wire and carefully bend it back and forth across the shape of the petal, starting with just one bead on a row at the top, and then getting to a maximum in the middle, and then decreasing again to the tip. Once he's done that, he takes another piece of thin wire and stitches this panel of beads onto the frame, going through the loops at the ends of the rows. Now, things are often repaired using wire, and it's usually a bodge. But here, because the lampshade is built using wire, if you fix it using wire, it'll be as good as new. And to me, this Protea lampshade embodies the pioneer spirit. It's perfect for someone who appreciates beauty, but who also wants to live an uncomplicated life. These three examples give you an idea of the different directions you can take. But it's essential to have a direction, to give your design work a sense of purpose. You can't do everything. And I spent some time looking for a design that had no clear direction. And it's very difficult to find one because they tend to be mediocre and to fall by the wayside. But I did come across another design with a clear sense of direction. This is the Trangia stove, which is designed for backpackers and has been built in Sweden for many decades. It's a little aluminium stove that burns methylated spirit, and all the parts of it, the stand and the burner and the cooking pot and the handle, nest together in a stack like a Russian doll, making it very compact. So the sense of purpose here, the direction, is the lightweight and the dependable simplicity. You just get your stove and get out to see nature. I haven't drawn this as a Venn diagram because the overlap is everywhere. The triangle is designed to help you identify the important direction that forms the heart of your design work. So your product can occupy any spot within this triangle. And if it's closest to the pioneer corner, then the direction of your design work is the independence. But if you could also bring in the characteristics of the workhorse market and the heirloom market, the performance and the experience, that's even better. That's icing on the cake.